It's hard to think that a film adaptation made the cut. However, as you'll see in the following paragraphs, video game adaptations of gangster films appear to be quite competent. Scarface, The World Is Yours is one such game that fans of the film or simply fans of fantastic gangster video games should check out. Tony Montana's persona is as entertaining in the game as he is in the film, making him the game's most compelling selling point. Because it has been the topic of numerous successful crime films, the Tommy gun-wielding mafia is frequently the first to come to mind when criminals are mentioned. It's only logical that these sophisticated mobsters have their own open-world game. The second Mafia game is the most definitive of all the Mafia games since it follows a classic and engaging story that you'll remember. Players assume the role of Vito Scaletta as he returns from the war and joins the Falcone crime family in order to re-establish his life in Empire Bay. The Godfather is one of the greatest films of all time, and a game that captures its cinematic enchantment should be required viewing. Fortunately, there is a game about it, and it's actually quite good compared to most movie games. EA produced and published the Godfather computer game, which is an open-world masterpiece. It follows the development of Aldo Trapani, a fictional character in the mythos, through the ranks of the Corleone crime family, which overlaps with the events of the first film. You can't go wrong with Assassin's Creed Syndicate when it comes to rampaging against other gangs with good old-fashioned fisticuffs and knives. The majority of the game takes place in Victorian London, at a time when gangs ruled the city. Evie and Jacob Fry, two siblings, attempt to clean up the gang's mess by forming their own gang. The other gangs, it turns out, are proxies for an organization that is essentially a clone of the Illuminati. Hong Kong and the Chinese Triad are two of history's most dangerous and violent gangs. They are also among the most powerful in East Asia. So it's only right that Sleeping Dogs gives them their fair share of open-world crime action. This game recreates Hong Kong and tells the story of Wei Shen, an undercover cop who becomes involved with the Triad and loses sight of his mission. It's a nice change of pace from the Western games, and the trendy music and oriental visuals should delight players. The Saints Row series is without a doubt one of the most outrageous video game franchises ever created. The fact that it centers on a group of charming gangsters is also a big plus. The third game, arguably for the better, was a turning point in the series. There's no better time to play this masterpiece than now, with the Saints Row revival set to release in 2022. The Warriors is a video game version of the same named film, and it's about strange gangs of violent people battling for turf in a supposedly dismal New York City, much like its source material. Of course, it's not a true dystopia, but New York City in the 1970s and 1980s was not dissimilar to what the film depicted. The Warriors video game, in any case, is a faithful replica of the film and its idea. The Warriors puts you in command of various members of the titular gang as they rampage through the city in order to protect what they own. Saints Row 4 took everything good about its predecessor and amplified it by a factor of 100. The player character gained superpowers and became president of the United States all of a sudden, all while fighting an alien invasion. If you're seeking for utter anarchy, Saints Row 4 is without a doubt one of the most enjoyable video games on our list. It's a thrill flying around the map and destroying foes without a care in the world. Driver is without a doubt one of the most renowned games on this list, with its original PlayStation release being nothing short of groundbreaking. Playing as a getaway driver in high-stakes circumstances is a shockingly addictive gaming loop. Unfortunately, the Driver franchise faded into obscurity following a string of lackluster sequels that couldn't match the original's greatness. It's a pity, but the original game is still a solid experience that racing game enthusiasts should absolutely try. The original game in the Mafia series was a classic title that led players to put themselves in the shoes of Tommy Angelo, a Mafia member. It was a fantastic film that got a well-deserved remake, which is likewise fantastic in its own right. The first Mafia game's strength is unquestionably its plot, which is a fun to unravel. The original game's gameplay may have been weak, but the remake did a good job of updating most of the game's out-of-date mechanics. For a long time, the Yakuza series was a beat-em-up with enjoyable gameplay. As a result, fans were surprised and concerned when they learned that the core series' seventh game would be a JRPG instead. Like a Dragon, on the other hand, managed to seamlessly accommodate this gameplay modification and deliver one of the best turn-based games of all time. It helps that Ichiban Kasuga is a fairly interesting protagonist who competently fills Kiryu's position in the plot. Returning to the original Yakuza scenario, the Yakuza have long established their gang's control in Japanese cities' urbanity. That's why, in the form of the Yakuza franchise, they have a hugely popular video game series about them. Yakuza 0 is the only game that accurately portrays the series' peak potential and wackiness. Few games about vicious and hardened gangsters include karaoke gambling machines to channel their softer sides. When it comes to the best gangster experience ever in a video game, few can compare to the enchantment that Grand Theft Auto: San Andreas brought to the gaming world. Even though it was launched in 2004, it still manages to compete in terms of depth, scale, and scope with even the most recent GTA titles. Players assume the role of Carl Johnson, who must steadily re-establish his dying gang's power in Los Santos through open-world gang fights while dating, dealing with the CIA, and resolving his family's problems. Just as soon as he manages to keep up with that dang train. Cowboys and Western frontier outlaws are technically gangsters as well. They have guns and create connections of loyalty, especially in Red Dead Redemption 2, where players are part of a community that is becoming increasingly fractured over time. The main character Arthur Morgan and the Van der Linde gang attempt to flee America's modernity at the turn of the century in Red Dead Redemption 2. It's the best-looking gangster game on the market right now. That is, unless Rockstar decides to reshuffle the throne with the next Grand Theft Auto game. While most gamers regard Grand Theft Auto 5 as the definitive Grand Theft Auto experience, the fourth game in the series is more critically acclaimed. This is primarily owing to the game's more focused gameplay. Of course, the fact that Grand Theft Auto 4 was a huge step forward from its predecessors, which were all fantastic games in their own right, helped. Fans of the franchise will love taking on the role of Niko Bellic in Grand Theft Auto 4.